Well, good evening, everybody. Late here in Scotland. Good evening, Kay. Thank you for joining us. What time is it over there with you at the moment?
5 p.m. A little
Yeah.
after 5 p.m. Yeah.
Now, we were going to go with the excuse that we were paying tribute to the dude by starting a wee bit late.
Yeah, I'm a pro.
But it wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. It was just me running a bit behind. Yeah, it's always a good idea to I like to do that as well, just to make sure that everything is running as it should be on the channel. Let me just make sure that's there we go. Come on. Yeah, there we go. I see you and me. So, but yes, the sound is always the problem because it's delayed. What you get is the much delayed. So, yes. So as I say, I do apologise. Nothing at all to do with the tribute to the dude. It was simply the fact I was just running late. And I mean, first of all, this Daniel case, there are so many similarities with other cases. Mm-hmm. The first thing I would say is that Outcry, the documentary that came out, Outcry.
Oh,
it seems to me, and you can shoot me down in flames on this, that maybe there was a genuine complaint to begin with, but then to advertise for more people to come forward just seemed bizarre to me.
In Outcry?
In both Outcry and in Daniel's case. They basically, was it Gregory and Davis and Gregory, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, they basically went out and sort of coerced.
Mm-hmm. Cultivated the accusers. Yeah, I mean, it all started out with the after hours traffic stop, which was unfortunate because there are so many misconceptions about this case because, well, of the way it was covered in the media for one thing, but he turned off his computer as he did. They showed at trial through, the records at the police department that was his practice, to shut the computer off as he was, leaving the department on the way home. And he encountered Janie Liggins,
right,
which I call the initial accuser because it really should have started and stopped with her. It should have never gotten past her. So he, sees her swerving and pulls her over at a busy intersection, although it was 2 a.m. So I think only 2 cars were visible driving by in the grainy video that you can find online. And, he Pat searched her, did the clasp and shake. He searched her car. She was crying. Basically, anyone who's seen his 2-hour interview, everything that he said, and he did forget to say that in his story, when he was telling his story, he forgot to say that she kept talking about pistol and was acting like he was afraid she was going to shoot him or shoot her. Which, he went through his story a couple times, and then Detective Davis said, well, did she say something about being afraid of your gun? And so then that jogged his memory. And I guess I just kind of stack that up to what his frame of mind must have been by that point in the interview, because he readily admitted to the traffic stop at lineup the next day. They pulled him out of lineup, took him into Superior's office. He agreed. They photographed him, took him downtown, put him in a small interview room that was about 80 something degrees in there, and questioned him for 2 hours. But, I think once he realized that he was being accused of sexual assault, and then when they laid the Terry Morris, when they tried to say, hey, we got another woman, and she's saying the same thing, the exact same thing, which she wasn't saying the exact same thing, but I mean, I know they lie just like they did with Brendan. I mean, certainly they weren't as bad with Daniel as they were with Brendan, but I just think that I can't decide if Detective Davis is just so dumb that she really felt like Daniel was guilty, because by the end of the 2-hour interview, she was convinced of his guilt, and that was it. They didn't, I mean, this is less than 24 hours after the alleged oral sodomy that she says that he forced her to perform on him. And they were done with their investigation, except for the fact that she knew, and this is, I'm paraphrasing what she said, that, well, you don't always get things done when you have one victim, but when you have 13 and the MO's the same and the verbiage is the same, then you can get something done. So she knew that she was going to have some real problems with prosecuting Daniel on Janie Liggins' charge alone, because nothing that Janie Liggins said ended up bearing any fruit for them. The DNA, the SANE kit came back negative for Daniel's DNA. The fingerprints, as Eric Cozy showed in one of his videos, he showed a photograph of the car that had kind of a layer of dust on it. And, that's, again, they had possession of his car less than 24 hours after the event. It had not rained. And no fingerprints, no palm prints anywhere that she said he put his hands and he made her put her hands. So nothing she said could be proven. And so they knew that they were going to have to jump through some hoops to make this fly. And Rocky Gregory had Terry Morris's case on his desk. So this is June 18th when the after hours traffic stop happened. And Terry Morris's incident came about from a 911 call. Her former boyfriend, for some reason, she was in the car with him. It's not clear really what the real story is, because the story has changed. But he picked her up at some point. She was upset with him because he had a new girlfriend. She was really upset. She was on something. And she wanted him to take her to the Valero gas station. And he thought if he took her there, she would get out. She did not. She became violent and started tearing up his car and throwing things at him. And he told her, Terry Lynn, I'm going to call the police. And she just was going crazy. And he called the police. And then when she realized that he was on the phone with the police, she said, you're going to call the police? The same that done raped me. And that's how that allegation that a cop raped her came about. And that was on May 24th. So from May 24th to June 18th, when Daniel's after hours traffic stop happened, they hadn't really done, they had brought her in for one interview. They had a confidential informant track her down, and they brought her in. There is a video of that on June 3rd. And they brought her in, and she was coming in to sign a refusal to prosecute. But man, he badgered her. He did not treat her like you should treat a mentally ill rape victim. And they decided to join those two cases because that would then make Holtzclaw a serial rapist. So from that point, even though she had already signed a refusal to prosecute, from that point, they just went gangbusters. Going back and creating a list. They created the victim profile off of Terry Morris, not Janie Liggins. We're investigating the Janie Liggins case. Janie Liggins has accused Daniel. He did not deny that he pulled her over. I mean, there's no dispute that he pulled any of these women over. It's all, if he didn't admit to it, the rest of them they got from his police records and his GPS, and they just looked for women who he had pulled over. And if they could find women that he had pulled over more than once, that would be better because they could work with that more. And they stacked it. They approached these women and stacked it. It's
let's just can I just ask you about the who and this is where the sort of comparison to Outcry comes in. So I felt that throughout the Outcry documentary, it wasn't until we got later on into it that we began to get the sense that what the one child had said had actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
But then they'd gone and tried to get other people, other kids to say the same. When in Daniel's case, I seem to recall that there were allegations that a policeman had been doing this, but that he was a coloured policeman.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it that had made that?
So Sherry Ellis. Daniel got, I think, 62 or 63 years for Sherry Ellis. And so that was one of Kim Davis's victims that she developed. And so she was trying to get a hold of her. She, I guess, had talked to a few family members. And so what they were doing is they were giving away, the information that the women could use to create their allegations. So the women could get that information from their family members, and they did. And then they could kind of decide, so Kim Davis stopped by and she said that she believes that you're a victim of sexual assault, and whether they said by a police officer or whatever, we don't know, because she didn't record a lot of the interviews. Right. And, then that information got passed along. He's doing different things to women and gave him all the information that gets passed along to Sherry. And somehow Kim does finally end up with Sherry's phone number, and she calls her while she's at school one day. And one of the first things Sherry says is, she said, Kim said, let me just say this, I have received a tip that you were sexually assaulted by an Oklahoma City police officer? And Sherry said, yes, I have been. And then Kim just went into, I need to hear the whole story. And so I want you to come down to the apartment. But Sherry just started talking. And the first thing she said was, it was a black guy. It was a black officer. And that just wasn't a problem at all. She went all through her story that she had already created. And, maybe Sherry Ellis was raped by an Oklahoma City police officer who was black, or by someone who was black. I don't dispute that any of these women could have been raped. They were not raped by Daniel Holtzclaw. That was her.
Yeah, I think statistically unfortunately, there are thousands of incidents of the police abusing their power. Mm-hmm. But it just makes you beggars belief. How did they float this one over the bar? That they're saying that the accuser is saying it's a black person. At some point in the trial, did anybody say to her, now you were assaulted by a police officer, is Daniel the person that did this?
With Sherry Ellis, they asked her to point him out in the courtroom at trial. And even though common sense would tell anyone in a courtroom could figure out who the defendant is when you're on the stand, I would think, she couldn't point him out. And it was so weird how the jury just didn't care that she said he was, not only that he was a black police officer, but that his skin tone was a shade darker than hers. And she's 5'11", and she thought that he was shorter than her. Mm. So, who knows?
What beggars belief is that in Making a Murderer, we hear Kathleen Zellner say that she trusts the legal system and the jury system.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm watching from 5,000 miles away. That to me just beggars, again, it beggars belief. How on earth could they have found Daniel guilty?
Yeah.
It
was stunning.
When did reasonable doubt go out the window? And and what happened to these jurors to make them?
Well, Ferguson had
pressure put on them,
and Benjamin Crump was representing these women, and he was pushing the hands up, don't shoot narrative, which, I'm not degrading that movement at all. So the Black Lives Matter mob came to Oklahoma City. They were outside protesting. You could hear at one point in the trial, the judge had to admonish the jury to disregard what they were hearing, which was 36 counts, a counter going on, 36 counts, give him life. For right now, the other thing they were saying escapes me. It'll come back in a minute. But I think intimidation, I feel like they might have been afraid what's going to happen. Because Grace, Artists for Justice leader, she said in an interview that, we knew that it was going to go bad if it didn't come back guilty. We knew we were going to riot, but we weren't going to riot in our neighborhood, and they wouldn't let us riot over there, which I don't know what she was talking about, maybe downtown or wherever, Bricktown, which was newly renovated, newly refurbished. And, so I don't know what we'll do. So that was kind of the mentality, is that what kind of violence was going to happen. We had already seen what happened in Ferguson. We had already seen the city burn. I really think people were just maybe scared. One of the jurors said, Ron Hill was interviewed after the verdict, and he said that, people were scared. He wasn't scared, because he's a military guy and whatever. But, some people were concerned. Protesters were approaching jurors in the hallway as they were waiting in line for the elevator or the bathroom. So people were taking photographs of jurors inside the courtroom. One of the accusers, I think it was her father, they took his cell phone away because he was taking pictures of the jury. So maybe that's why they were frightened. I don't know, because it makes no sense. I mean, they definitely weren't following. They didn't have a reasonable doubt chart to look at if they needed one. And apparently they needed one, because they got it really wrong.
Yeah. For me, it's definitely a case of there was pressure brought on by these activists who, presumably, from their point of view, the trial was more about the police department being on trial for all of the things that have been done wrong in the past, and it just so happened that Daniel was the personification of this. This grievance.
Well, I mean, I think maybe that could be, but I think they really were just going to do something about this white cop committing violence on black. You've got the white cop who kills a black kid. No one's held accountable in Ferguson, Missouri. And the police chief ends up losing his job over that and has to resign. And then, then you've got this.
How far away is the town of Enid? I believe that's where Daniel's from.
It's from Oklahoma City. It's about 80 miles north.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well.
Yep.
And what's the feeling amongst the residents in Enid about what's happened here?
Oh, I think in the beginning, everyone was against him.
Against Daniel?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, because the information that people were getting was horrible.
Right.
Leaking things that, I mean, it's horrible, and Ferguson is fresh, and by the time they piled all those women on, Ferguson was really out of control. And I really just think people were watching the media, and they already had him guilty in their minds. So, wow. I mean, it's not that way anymore.
What caused that change of heart? Obviously, we've, as I say, we've had that recent series Outcry come out. Making a Murderer is just a phenomenally huge success in raising an awareness. I've watched the documentary Daniel in the Den.
That's probably the answer to your question. Michelle Malkin was the first. Team Daniel, a group of advocates, they were reaching out to all kinds of people to try to get them to take a look into it and do a documentary. And Michelle she agreed to do that. So, and she really did a good job. So I think that started changing people's minds. And then as more and more shows come out on Netflix and Amazon Video, more series about wrongful conviction, false allegations and coerced confessions and all that stuff, I think people are really starting to realize that, yeah, people really are wrongfully convicted.
Mm-hmm.
And, and this team behind Daniel Holtzclaw just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The petition, it just keeps growing. I haven't looked at it in quite a while. Last time I looked, it had over 50,000 signatures, but we've been through 2 governors since then, and neither one of them care to look at it or even hear about the case. It is pathetic.
Is that because it's considered almost like a bit of a political hot potato to look at something?
Yeah,
like that. This whole idea of finality that we had a situation, we got somebody for it, we don't want to dig this up again.
And if we dig this up again, then what's going to happen? We're going to have to pay a bunch of money, and that's what our current governor thinks. Our former governor was just an idiot. I mean, she was just completely incompetent. She wasn't going to do it just because she probably thought he was guilty, and she wasn't going to look into it. I'm just guessing that. I don't have anything kind to say about her, but Governor Stitt has said, he got cornered in a radio interview once. He's really slick at making sure that he doesn't get stuck in a room full of people like me who are going to be able to ask him a question with someone's video camera rolling or audio rolling. But he did get caught in that situation about a year ago, I guess. And someone asked him to look into the Daniel Holtzclaw case. And he said, yeah, we're going to look into all of those cases. That was the last thing we ever heard about that. He won't even watch Michelle's documentary. Maybe he has, and he's a business guy. He's not going to open any can of worms that might cost the state of Oklahoma 6 figures or more.
I was going to say, what I struggle with is anybody looking at this case and actually looking at what happened. This any thought that Daniel is guilty. For me, it's quite clear. That there was nothing proven. Because there was nothing to prove in the case of Daniel. They're trying to pin it on him. Maybe, I think what we're saying is, yes, maybe somebody within the police department wasn't really being very professional, but it certainly wasn't Daniel. What I'm trying to think, what would be the most damning, if there is such a thing, evidence against Daniel?
Well, I mean, there's no damning evidence from Janie Liggins. That's why the case should have just been closed, and he should have been given his gun back and his job back and his life back. But I mean, once they piled on all those accusers, I guess some of the most damning evidence was an accuser who he was her charge was he was found not guilty of, which if she hadn't slipped up in the end of a police interview as she was walking out, he would have been convicted of, I can't remember how many years her charges altogether were, but that was Shardarian Hill. Eric Cozy did a video about Shardarian. Yeah. And so how he came into contact with her was she was smoking PCP, with a friend in a parked car, and he rolls up and starts questioning them. They're obviously high. He calls a female officer out to search her, finds the PCP, puts it on the hood of the car, and she decides, I mean, she's already high on PCP, but, she decides, and it's quite a bit, she's going to get rid of the evidence. So she bends down and grabs that glass vial in her mouth and crushes it between her teeth and consumes that whole vial of PCP. So Daniel calls 911. They get her to the hospital. She's getting, washed off and whatever they do, I don't know. She's hooked up to a heart monitor, and she's in his custody. So he's there in the room with her, and they visited back and forth for hours on end until they cleared her to be able to be taken to jail. And so she created those charges and said that he played with her breast and I can't remember how many charges she had, but basically that he did that to her in a busy ER room. And she said no one ever came in to check on her the whole several hours that she was there, which that wasn't true. People in the hallway, I guess, when he escorted her to the bathroom or whatever, I mean, while they were washing her down, there were other police officers there who said he wasn't trying to look at her. He wasn't doing all the things that she said he was doing. So, I mean, she has a video interview, so you can watch her body language and you can watch her put these, it's not just like she's creating this on the fly and it's really obvious in her interview. But he was charged with 3 counts of sexual battery, forcible oral sodomy, rape in the second degree by instrumentation, and indecent exposure, which he, was found not guilty on all of those, because at the very end of her interview, let me back up. So you ask what's the most damning. Mm-hmm. So he takes her to jail, whatever. She gets out of jail, and he friends her on Facebook, and he asks her, hey, how you doing? Are you staying out of trouble? In his mind, which this was a stupid thing to do. In his mind, I think he knew he saved her life. I mean, he felt a bond to her. So, I mean, as strange as that sounds, because she could have overdosed on that PCP. So in a sense, he saved her life, and he spent all this time in the room with her, visiting back and forth. At one point during the hospital thing, there was a foot chase where he was needed to assist. And I don't know if someone else came to guard her. I'm not sure if she ended up in that room alone. I know she was handcuffed to the bed, but there's a photograph of Daniel following behind the other officer who took this person who they were chasing through the hospital to the county jail. So I just think the interaction after she got out of jail, back and forth, and I'm assuming that he was either just trying to encourage her to turn her life around and get on the right track, because that is something that Daniel would do. I don't know. I mean, the other side is, with a lot of these women, he was trying to get information on drug houses and on the criminal activity in the area. So and she obviously was in his area because that's where he got her out of the truck to question her, was in his patrol area. So that's pretty damning. That is, I mean, that makes people think, he must be guilty. So at the end of her interview, as she's leaving,
for wanting to care,
yeah,
to have a bit of compassion.
Well, I mean, nobody said anything about him wanting to care in the news. I mean, it was just, he went to her house and talked to her outside of her house once. And, I think that's where she alleges that he took her, wanted to take her, asked to take her around the corner or whatever. But yeah, nobody was saying anything positive about Daniel Holtzclaw. No one. But at the end of the interview, as she's walking out, she says to Detective Gregory, "Oh, so
yeah,
is this good evidence? Because even if he didn't rape nobody, or anything, he's still contacting women that he's been in touch with. So I mean, I guess thank goodness for 6 counts went away. About 36.
Yeah. Sorry, just to rewind then. So she had this glass vial of PCP that she actually broke and consumed.
Yeah, she crushed it in her
glass.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
That's life-threatening.
I mean, yes.
Just the glass alone, surely.
Glass alone, yeah. Not an overdose of PCP, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But, she was already high on PCP when she thought that was a good idea. So, and, at trial, they asked her if he was with her the whole time, if he ever left her. And she said, no, he was there the whole time, when in fact he did leave her to go on this foot chase and go down to the county jail with the other officer who was taking someone into custody. So that was the first she knew of, that was at trial, that he really wasn't in the room with her the whole time.
Yeah, the other thing I seem to remember was this incredibly small, minute amount of DNA that was found on Daniel's trousers, because they'd done a DNA swab,
Yeah.
And it was it something like, if he had attacked these other women, you would expect their DNA, not the one that they found. And we had that, was it Dr. Crane point out, well, this DNA, it transfers in the most bizarre ways.
Yeah. So yeah, Dr. Crane was talking about explaining transfer DNA. And, because Kim Davis, when they asked her, could this be transfer DNA? She said, no. I've never had a case where there was transfer DNA. No. Like, okay. I mean, she probably couldn't tell you what transfer DNA means, but, oh, wow. Yeah. So Dr. Crane explained the transfer aspect of it, but there were a group of scientists that looked at the evidence and looked at the DNA, and they prepared a report for the court, which the court rejected because the court didn't accept anything that would be exculpatory for Daniel ever. And I'll just read, if you don't mind, a few things that they said from the report. The DNA matching a 17-year-old's profile on the fly of Mr. Holtzclaw's uniform pants had a valid non-sexual explanation. Non-intimate skin cell DNA, indirect transfer. Also, you've seen how they collected the pants. Rocky
Oh,
opens
yeah.
the sack, puts his ungloved hand in the sack, allows Daniel to roll the pants up that still have the belt on it. Rocky never touches the pants, but his DNA is all over the bag, which, that's insignificant except for the fact that there was male DNA in the sample, contrary to what Elaine Taylor, the Oklahoma City's analyst, said. There was DNA in the sample of a male, and they wouldn't be able to say if it's Daniel's or Rocky's, but if it was Rocky's, the only way it got on those pants was to transfer onto those pants. So,
when I watched that scene, it was almost as if he couldn't care less. He was just going through the motions.
I really just,
and he wasn't really doing it.
Yeah, I thought he looked super awkward, like nervous kind of. At that point, watching that back again the second time, because let me just tell you, when I first looked at that interview, I was just bored at home. I thought Holtzclaw was guilty. I was only looking at that 2-hour interview because I want to see if he was a bad liar or a good liar. I just wanted to watch his body language. And by the end, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is not right. I've been going around, confirming people's guilty, comments when they make them. I feel horrible. I've got to do something to undo all this damage.
Yeah.
So I just really felt when I watched it back again the second time that it was like, does he already know that they're going to frame Daniel? This is super early in the investigation for them to have already decided that Daniel's going down for this. I mean, I know obviously they did decide that at some point, but he looked like awkward collecting those pants with that bag. I don't know.
Was there ever a plea deal given to Daniel?
No, that would have still been a bad deal. That wasn't a good resolution. It had to be guilty. He had to go to prison. I mean, no, they never offered. There was never any discussion ever of a plea deal, ever. And I don't think Daniel would
never have accepted it. No, but I just wondered if
he believed in the system.
Yeah.
And he really thought that he was gonna go through this hell, and at the end of it, the truth would come out, and he would get his life back. And he was naive in that aspect.
Sure.
So,
I'm obviously interested in particular in that, as you were saying, in Enid and presumably throughout Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, everybody thought, this is a good thing. We've got a cop who is abusing his badge, and we've put him away so that he'll never do this again.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated in the fact that was the perception, that was what the media had portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
When did any sort of suspicion that wasn't the case? When was it? Was it just the Michelle Morgan documentary that changed your mind, or was it something before that made you think?
Me personally?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh no! When I watched the 2-hour interview in December of 2016, just on a whim, I knew he was innocent, and I contacted Eric Holtzclaw, Daniel's father, and just said I wanted to help. I just wanted to. I knew Daniel was innocent, and I wanted to see. I just wanted to learn more about the case, and so I've been I've been digging into the facts of the case since December of 2016.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And when did, couple of things, when did Brian Bates become interested in the case, and when did Daniel in the Den come out?
Oh, when did oh man, I don't know when Daniel
Uh,
in the Den came out. After probably in 2017
right.
sometime. You know, I need to look that up. I should know that. But Brian Bates was the investigator for the defense. So, you know, he was involved with the case throughout the whole time. And he did, according to Daniel, he did most of the work on the case as far as prepping for trial and stuff. It was, you know, when Daniel would come to work on the case, he would be working with Brian Bates predominantly. But when did, you know, Brian had some medical issues, and so the podcast was delayed.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, he's put out, that's when the first positive, I mean, like kind of positive media coverage came out, was around him releasing that podcast.
Right.
And maybe it's just because he has a relationship with, you know, Oklahoma City. He has a relationship with law enforcement. He has a relationship with the media already. So they were willing to, you know, give him something. And then again, after Daniel filed his direct appeal, immediately there were secret hearings. That, you know, because in the appeal, they were challenging the DNA because, you know, what Elaine Taylor said about the DNA didn't end up being correct. And so they were challenging the DNA, and in effect challenging her credibility or her qualification to even do that job, I guess. But we don't really know, because I don't get it, really. I mean, I call bullshit on those secret hearings being what that's about. I think that was a good opportunity for them to strategize and figure out how they were going to get out of this. And they did. Because who has a personnel meeting at the court? I mean, that's why the transcripts are redacted, is because it's a personnel issue. Who handles personnel issues in the court? I don't get it. Maybe I just don't know. You know, maybe I'm just ignorant or something. But
I was just looking up. Yeah, at the moment the petition is sitting at 53,820. I can't help thinking if a lot more people need to get interested in this case, and it needs something along the lines of a Making a Murderer documentary to be on Netflix to really get the interest up. My hope would be, of course, and I don't know if this would happen, is if Stephen Brendan are released pretty quickly, then maybe Kathleen Zellner will come back on board.
I mean, I could see that happening. You know, she believes in his innocence. I mean,
absolutely,
she would have never messed with the case. She would have never done anything that she did for the case if she didn't. And
she certainly wouldn't tweet support for Daniel, which she did for a lot of her tweets.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was saying a lot of her tweets when she first took on Stephen's case, it had the message, you know, that Daniel Holtzclaw is innocent as well, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. His photograph is still in her banner, and you know, one of the letters. So she's not taking that down. I mean,
No.
she's too busy to be a part of this case. And I mean, it's a convoluted case by design. It's hard to, I mean, it was hard to probably defend in the first place because there are just so many, it's so bizarre and so many moving pieces and so many people and so many allegations and so many scenes. And I mean, it's not that there's any evidence of anything, but just the sheer number of accusations, just having to look into each one and figure it all out. Figure out, even for me, just looking at it and seeing, you know, how, no, that's not true. That didn't happen. You know, this is how this accuser's story changed from the initial report to the second interview to preliminary hearing to trial, because the stories were ever changing. They didn't all start out. I mean, Janie Liggins is the only one. If any one of those accusers could have remembered if they could have remembered when Daniel Holtzclaw stopped them last, because they did use his police records and stops against him. He did stop all those women. So if any of the women could remember, oh, hey, yeah, that was that bodybuilder cop that stopped me over by whatever and whatever, then they would have something to start their story with. But, you know, many of them couldn't, and they just pulled something out of thin air. It didn't match the GPS. The detectives had to get them to change their story to match the GPS. They needed them to change their story to make a black guy a white guy. I mean, Carla Raines also said that it was a black cop that ever messed with her. First, she says 7 times that nothing ever happened, that the only thing that ever happened to her was a couple years ago, a black cop. He exposed himself to me. But, you know, Rocky Gregory just, it's like, whew, he didn't even follow up on any questions. He didn't, that wasn't an issue. Oh, you know, that was a couple years ago, I guess. That's not what I'm working on. I don't know, man.
It's funny, we're kind of laughing at that kind of incompetence, and we shouldn't be laughing at all.
No, we shouldn't be laughing. You know? It's just, I mean, we could cry, you know. Yeah. I've done that enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about the fact that, you know, that the case is complicated, convoluted. For me, though, this basically sums up where everything has gone wrong. It should be complicated, and it should be difficult to convict somebody. It should be easy for the accuser to say, well, you know, there is doubt. You know, I am innocent until proven guilty, and I deserve the benefit of the doubt here. And it just seems to be that the whole system has just been turned upside down.
I mean, it wasn't ever like that for Daniel. So, but you're right.
You know, it's like Stephen Avery said, you know, once said, not Stephen Avery, it was Dean Stram, to be accused is to lose. As soon as you've been accused of something, then you really are struggling to try and get it sorted out. I mean, you know, I mean, your opinion, you know, is it a case of not just you know, a sort of a really high profile documentary about the case, but also are we simply waiting on you know, the opinions of, you know, the people involved, maybe a new governor or a new attorney general to come forward and say, we need to look at this, or even a conviction integrity unit to say
all of those things. We've been begging the governor. We've been begging 2 governors for a conviction integrity unit. It's not happening. I mean, Mike Hunter, the AG, he's the one that he's the one that addressed the appeal, I guess,
Right.
on behalf of the state, whatever. There's no way he had time to review that case, the
Yeah.
Daniels case. There's no way. He was in the middle of putting together a big opioid lawsuit for the state of Oklahoma, which he was, heavily involved in. So whatever. I mean, I call bullshit on that too.
Sure. We have a question from Linda.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is water. No, it's vodka.
Now, I guess, okay, you must know this channel by now. Nobody comes on this channel drinking water.
Man, I almost got a Guinness out just because I feel like that's what I see you drinking. Are you drinking Guinness and Scotch?
I've done, I'll be honest with you, I've done a couple of videos to do with music where I've been interviewing Scottish people, and I've pretended that I've been drinking large amounts of Scotch whiskey. It's actually apple juice.
Oh, I thought you were drinking Scotch. Okay.
I do occasionally have a Scotch, but it's nowhere near as much as people might think. And yes, I do like a beer from time to time. I must admit that's my main forte. But yes, it
truly is water. Yes.
Yeah. Ah, dear. It's as I say, I have signed the petition, and we'll pop the link. I'll get the link and pop it into the description of this video. Really, that's all we can do is to keep talking about the case, because again, as Stephen Brandon's lawyers, Dean and Jerry, have pointed out, it's what do we do about these sort of things? We talk about them, and opinions of guilt change to opinions of innocence eventually, don't they?
They do. And, that's all Daniel ever asks for anyone to do, is to look at the facts of his case with his mind. He's not begging people to come on over to the innocence train. He really wants people to look at the facts and make up their own mind. And most people do come to an innocent decision. So,
yeah. Well, it's just mind-boggling, all of this sort of when I saw the Outcry documentary, there were so many parallels with Daniels, and at least in the Outcry video, Greg Kelly finally gets the justice that he deserves
pretty quickly too, in the scheme of things.
I think it was down to the all credit, I think, must go to that Attorney General in what was it? It was the guy? Yes, it was the AG, wasn't it?
I think it was a new DA.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
a new DA.
That's right. Yeah.
See, we need a new DA. Our DA, he's involved in. This isn't the only wrongful conviction case he's involved in.
Yeah.
He's a piece of work. He needs to go, but no one runs against him. So I'm hoping that, that Black Lives Matter are making a big enough difference with, trying to change some things with police brutality and, wrongful convictions. In the name of Julius Jones, they're calling for David Prater's resignation. He's not going to resign, but perhaps someone will run against him who cares about people, who doesn't look at people as disposable.
That is the saddest part of it all, isn't it? Is the fact that that there appears to be people who, for their own gain,
Mhm.
They're willing to do to somebody else, to another human being, what they've done to Daniel, what they were prepared to do to Greg Kelly, what they've done to Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey. And you think, really is you advancing your career, is it really that important that you've got to do this to innocent people?
Mhm. I saw that Elizabeth Warren had a petition going around, or has a petition going around, trying to take away immunity for law enforcement. I think all the immunity needs to go away, because there's really no motivation to be truthful.
No. Again, it was that again, going back to the outcry when they the one detective, I think his name was Daly, and they asked him, what is the goal of any investigation? To secure a conviction,
Yeah.
I thought, well,
In fact, it should be to follow the evidence in search of the truth. That's what it should be. But whatever. Oh man, it's a bad deal.
Yeah. No, I seem to remember that the DA in Greg Kelly's case was a guy called Sean Dick.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and he was the one that actually, he had an open mind and actually got his own lawyers to look at the situation, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And that's all that you ask is that these people look at it sensibly.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at those characters. Yeah, man, that Sean Mannix in that chief, man, he was a piece of work, wasn't he?
Well, he looked like William Shatner, the Star Trek captain.
Yeah,
he looked like him, but he reminded me, the way he was talking, he reminded me so much of Sheriff Herman, Robert Herman.
Oh wow, what a piece of scum.
Let's sorry, just before I say cheer and let you go. Hopes for Daniel. Obviously, the hope is that things will progress. And I believe that there is a civil suit being pursued by the victims, or the alleged victims in all of this.
Well, I mean, they're victims at this point, I guess, because their convictions. But even some of the people who are not guilty are a part of the lawsuit too. So yes, that trial's scheduled for October. I seriously don't think it's going to happen in October, just if for no other reason that coronavirus is really blowing up in Oklahoma. And I can just see it getting pushed again. I know that trials were on hold until a few weeks ago, maybe.
Could these civil suit trials, when they eventually happen, could they have an effect on helping Daniel once people get to know the true story?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you have the benefit of a lot of things from the civil trial that could end up helping Daniel, and maybe that's another reason that they'll push it out. I mean, it just keeps getting pushed for some reason. So even before coronavirus, it was getting pushed farther out and farther out. So yeah, I mean, that's the hope. That and getting a conviction integrity unit. That one thing, a real one, not a mock one. There are conviction integrity units around the country that are just a sham. They don't actually do any good and get innocent people out of prison. It's just to appease the people, I guess. So that would be great.
Yes, I think it's a case of in some places they're going to do a great job, and in other places there's going to be so much political skullduggery and gerrymandering going on that it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But yes, basically what we're looking forward to is Stephen and Brendan being released, Daniel's case getting looked at and the decision reversed. I'm trying to think of the other things that the dude was particularly interested in. Scott Davis is another conviction that needs to be addressed. There's the Eagle Nation cycle. Somebody needs to be held accountable for Michael Funk's death. It's a shame that the dude's no longer with us to see these things to their rightful conclusion. But
I mean, with all the work he's invested in that, it really is a shame that he doesn't get to be the one holding those people's hand and in the air when they walk out of there, because I know he would have been right there.
Yeah. But listen, as long as we keep talking about it, then we're shining a light on it. And as I say, certainly in Daniel's case, let's hope that film producers realise that this is the next big thing. What more do you want than the fact that Kathleen Zellner herself was involved initially in this? Was Zellner asked to come in once Daniel had been convicted?
Yes.
She's post-conviction, isn't she? She's
she initially came. I mean, she really was only involved with the civil aspect. She was working with that. When his appeal was upheld, or his conviction was upheld. I think she did take a look at that, and I mean, I know she wanted to do it, but I just think she felt like she couldn't do it justice, maybe because it was going to take so much time to do it right. Look at the way she did Stephen's. I mean, look at all that she did in Stephen's case. And that was just one individual. Think about having 13 different victims that you have to go through. Her plate was full, and I'd love to see her get involved. But her getting involved the way she did, I think it really changed a lot of people's minds, because people respect her and respect her opinion. And if she believed in his innocence, then I think that was good enough for a lot of people without even looking into the case. And, hopefully it caused a lot of people to start looking into the case for themselves. So,
Excellent. Finally, I'm sorry, I'm just going to do this just so that everybody can see. Just for a moment, I've got my excellent cards that you sent me.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you might notice.
Oh, it fits.
It fits fine. Yes. It took me a couple of minutes to figure out how it clipped on, and then I thought, no, it's just straightforward. It just prizes over the end stone, and so it's there. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And
I've spent quite a few of those out. I really have had fun making them, and it's kind of cool that all of the dudes' friends that I've been able to be in touch with, they all have one. So common things at the rallies, I guess, from now on. Everyone can wear the dude's bracelet. That was the thing at the last rally. I mean, I made up like these flyers that I took, that I handed out to everybody so that they could, just thoughts that I'd put down about it, and questioning,
why is it that the state is so reluctant to give any more stuff to Kathleen Zellner to test? You know, it's not rocket science. There's only one reason why they don't want her to test any more stuff.
Sure.
Because the little bit that she's done so far, everything has shown that he was framed, Stephen. Was framed. Yeah. And hopefully, we'll see some movement in this civil suit, the Daniel civil suit, which will lead to other. I'm
still working on the other Oklahoma State Supreme Court appeal. So that's due. I think that's due early next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. So I do have one other question, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this one. If you're in sort of fairly close contact with Eric Holtzclaw, how's he keeping up? Because it must be really, really difficult for him.
Yeah, it is very difficult for Eric and Kumiko.
Yeah.
They just put their whole lives into the case. Eric's, he should be retired right now, but, of course, he spent his retirement fund retaining Scott Adams and such. And so, he's back working and picking up extra shifts. And, I think that keeps his mind off of it sometimes, because, obviously he needs to shut that out sometimes to just not make himself crazy. But it's tough, it has completely taken the family's lives away from him, because this is what you do all the time, is try to get him out. Daniel's sister, Jennifer, she's a tireless advocate for Daniel. The biologist who found the error in the DNA has come on board, and she spends all of her spare time helping, find things, helping, put things together. So it's really changed everyone's lives.
Yeah. Well, if you do get the chance to say, obviously, greetings from Scotland, and to let him know that there are people a lot further than Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll see this video, so he will hear your words right there. Oh, well. And I know everyone's appreciative. Most of all Daniel, who I spoke to this morning.
Oh, wow.
He just wants to say thank you so much for your support and the platform to do this. It's people like you that are going to help get him out.
Well, yeah, it's all we can do is we can talk about it. We can shed light on this stuff. Sometimes the problem, if you like, is the fact that sometimes we end up in our own little echo chamber. And so hopefully that the fact that, the news about Daniel's wrongful conviction is spreading across the world. Hopefully that'll give him a little bit of a,
Well, the mere fact that I'm talking to you.
Yes.
And, you're not a part of you haven't until recently been a part of the Free Daniel Holtzclaw community. So, you guys have a whole different group of people who watch you and
That's right.
follow you, and it has to help. It has to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Kay, it's believe it or not, that's an hour and 15 minutes have just flown by.
Yeah, it does.
So I'm going to let you go and enjoy some more of that gin or vodka, whatever you've got in that large bottle. I might go and have one beer before I go to bed. But it's midnight here, so
oh my goodness, yeah.
Don't let the sunshine behind me deceive.
It fools me, yes.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Well, Kate,
so much. Yes, thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome, and thank you to everybody that's joined in. I was certainly keeping an eye on what was being said in the chat. I didn't think there was. I didn't see anything of a sort of a particular question. So it seems to me as if everybody in the chat is pretty much up to speed
Yeah.
with this case. So yeah, let's just keep shining a light on it and keep talking about it. Yeah, you never know. Opinions can be changed.
Yeah.
Quite quickly at times. Well, thank you everybody. Thank you, Kay. I'll say good night. Bye for now.
Good night.